Good afternoon, everyone. This is Griffin Greer with Motility's Professional Services Department. Today's 1 p.m. Eastern webinar will be reviewing the Master Inventory module. And again, this is not unit inventory where you would be keeping your vehicles, trailers, motorized, or towable, but where we will be keeping our parts, both parts that we currently actively have on-hand quantities of, as well as parts that we've historically purchased, which makes it easier to quickly reorder them even if they haven't been in stock for some time. So again, thank you for everyone that was joining. Hope this morning's sessions were helpful for those of you that joined. And we're going to go ahead and give, typical 4 or 5 minutes here for everyone else to get settled in, get started. So yeah, we'll talk to you in about 4 minutes and begin. All right, everybody, thank you for holding. I wanted to make sure we left enough time for anyone joining a few minutes late, but it looks like we have everybody for this afternoon's master inventory session, so we'll go ahead and get started. As always, this is Griffin here. If you have any questions throughout, feel free to reach out in the Q&A panel. Otherwise, you can hold them till the end, and I'll try to leave about 5 minutes or so for us to do a roundtable discussion. But without further ado, this was the master inventory training, so we will begin in our parts and service module as we have been for the invoicing webinars. And like I had mentioned before, while you can search inventory across locations, when you're keying in new inventory pieces, it's going to be based on the respective store you open. So I am in location 1. When I click on the master inventory down here in the bottom left, and I click to add a new part, we're presuming that this asset or this piece of inventory belongs to store 1 or store A. So there is a way to transfer in case you accidentally place it into the wrong store, so it's not the end of the world, but always good to know that, and you can always see when you open up your master inventory which location you're at. And the reason I mention is, again, I have regional parts directors, parts managers who do work out of multiple rooftops. They go store to store, manage the inventory, do transfers, things of that nature. So it is common for a user to have parts and service open up multiple times. Maybe they're working between stores. So again, just be cognizant of that location because it'll be very easy for you to double check, on screen, and make sure that I am looking in the location. Okay, just kind of want to reiterate that there. All right, so we're going to click on master inventory, and I could create a part from scratch, right? I could hit add, type in my part number. I'm going to make up one here, hit OK. The system is finding a part that matches that part number. It's from a parts price book. It looks like that random string of characters I typed in was actually a part number, except it's just missing the dash. We're going to go ahead and skip this price book ad, but that is kind of part of why I wanted to show you this process. It is typically easier to add parts from your price books. So for those of you who get price books or price files from your top vendors, NTP, Coast, Arrow, Meyer, you name it, Land and Sea, for those boat dealers here, we would want to go ahead and collect all of those most recent price books. Typically, some do them quarterly, others yearly, some update them once every now and then. But typically, if you request that information from your supplier, we can then turn around and import it into the system. Unfortunately, this isn't something Motility can automatically do for you, simply because the manufacturers of parts and the suppliers of these parts don't tend to have pricing that's equivalent across the nation. So Northeast pricing could be different from Southwest, depending upon demand. So, usually your price file that you request will be specific to your dealership, your location, and that results in us needing the dealerships themselves provide that file. Now, importing a price book is very easy to do. So if it's something that you want to take hold of on your own, we will teach you how to do it. It takes less than 5 minutes. And then each successive price book update that you need to run, you can handle internally. Otherwise, you can always send it to our support staff, and typically you'll be able to complete that same day. So whatever direction you want to take it, I would recommend going the price book route. So otherwise, you're going to have to do what we're about to do, which is key everything in by hand. I'm going to add a new part just so we don't copy anything from that stag price book. And let's go through. We're going to give it a description, call it a widget. Then we'll go down our list of fields. Now, I will mention the most important page of the master inventory record screen is this general tab. 99% of what your parts team is going to be using information here, like the pricing, the category, the name of the part, minimum and maximum values. The rest of these are kind of additional assistance or utilities for these parts. So again, we'll go through them, but they're not as important as learning this general page. For you to be able to comfortably stock in and sell every part, you're going to want to be very familiar with this page. So let's talk about what's necessary. Weight type is up to you. If I want to do 16 pounds or kilograms or whatever the case may be, This is optional, as is your height, width, and depth. These are optional. So are the dimension types. Minimum and maximum, again, optional, but when we're placing reorder routines, so I know that if I need a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 3, currently with my on-hand value showing 0, I need to order 5 of these to meet our maximum, placement for this month. While we are talking about the fields, I want to continue down the ones that we can edit here. And while we're talking about that, I might as well mention, very rarely do I run into folks using the prefix and suffix. It just requires additional fields on reporting. Typically, I know this was an auto functionality where they break out the part number into 3 separate fields. In our system, even if you use a dash or something like an asterisk, most of our part records can contain alphanumeric characters alongside some information. So note that you don't really have to break your part number up into 3 separate values unless that is how your parts department is. But I still would say try to keep it all in one field. It makes it easier to both report off of, and the stock reports built in the system are going to function a little better than breaking it out into 3 separate pieces. But with that being said, let's go down our list on the left here, and then we'll continue on our descriptors. Total on hand is how many you physically have in the warehouse, in your shop. Now, this is a number that is before what we've allocated, right? So let's say I have 10 in my warehouse, but 4 of those are already spoken for because they're allocated on invoices. So you'll see 4 on the allocations here and 10 in the on hand, which is going to do the math to let us know that we only have 6 available to sell to new customers. As we allocate that will continue to go downward until we've relieved all of our quantities on hand. If I want to check quantities across locations, you can click total on hand, and if this part existed in any of our other stores, I'd see their on-hand values, how many are allocated, back order, on order, and I could transfer. I could initiate a parts transfer that will move the balance of that part from one store to the next. You can see there's no part records for this. Well, that makes sense. This is a brand new part I'm keying in, so it isn't located in any of the other stores. But good to know that you can quick transfer there. Now, the longer transfer process involves creating a transfer PO, creating a parts ticket at the store that's quote unquote selling it to the other dealership, and then of course receiving those parts in once they arrive. And this is a much longer process, but there's a paper trail, and you can track when it was ordered, when it was received. You're welcome to use this quick transfer, but someone quick transferring in the system, how do I have verification that they actually took that part from this store to the one it was supposed to be going to? Where there is none. There's no paperwork trail. I can't tell who created the document. I can see who made the transfer, but from there's not much else. So yes, in a pinch, this is the fastest way to move parts between stores. And still we prefer we go through the transfer PO method, which we'll talk about in our ordering receiving session later today. So unallocated, we've talked about, this is all on invoices currently. Well, how do I see all those invoices that's currently attached to? Click on total allocated. Every ticket that has an allocation, right? What is an allocation? A part that is marked as sold but not yet relieved will be in this list. Now, this is a brand new part, so there are no allocations, but watch what happens when I remove my filter. And I have a sum total of $245,000 of parts that are on service and parts tickets that haven't yet been relieved. I have a lot of people ask me, reports for fulfilling orders and checking what's still on order and what hasn't been received. Sometimes this allocation screen, which you can also get to down here on the left, called parts allocation, number 602. Getting to this screen affords you a lot of information. For example, you can get to the invoice. You can notify the parts advisor. You can check all of the receiving and purchase orders that item is currently on. I've actually had team members utilize this screen and work on outstanding orders, research, whatever they need to do. They don't have to pull a report. They're working from this screen. For example, total on order is the TOO column. So if I do a greater than 0 filter on this field, greater than, not greater than or equal to, that would make more sense, right? So now I filter this and only my items that are on order are now showing. Now I could work through my list of receivers and POs and figure out why is there ordered POs out here and there's no receivers for it? And this actually can be more functional than a report because you're actively working through a table that you can filter by. You can look for specific items. Let's say you have an angry customer and they're on ticket 122951. I can find, okay, there's 7 parts here. 3 are on hand that we can probably relieve. 3 are on order and 1 is not ordered. And we don't have quantities of the one. We are in the negatives on the one that hasn't been ordered. So we need to go ahead and get that out there. A lot of information can be contrived from this screen. I would heavily advise becoming familiar with it, both within the master inventory and on the outside of it, just by clicking parts allocation. Now you can print this as well or export it to Excel if you prefer to work there. That seems to be a pretty customer-friendly tool as well. You can also hit print. So just keep in mind that's a very handy tool that I've found sometimes better than reports. So we've already talked about the math of these 3. Total on back order and total on order we will cover when we do our ordering and receiving webinar this afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern. So keep that in mind. We'll touch on those. But again, none of these items can be adjusted from this screen. Now, permissions-wise, we do have the ability to override that through this bin locations add tool, but usually by default we restrict this. Why? No part quantity or part cost should be corrected by hand. And I will repeat this. No part quantity should be fixed by hand by someone saying, oh, this shouldn't say 0, this should say 5, so let's just add 5 to inventory. Or noticing that the cost is wrong and fixing it here by just typing it in. This creates accounting entries. It creates expense entries, basically telling the system, well, we forgot to purchase in those 5, so we have to expense the cost of all of those parts to an adjustments account, which leads to a less of a net profit in that department, which is overall not the right way to do things. There's only 2 ways parts quantities can be changed in this system. I'm taking physical inventory out of the equation because that's a special example where at the end of the year we're doing our counts. But quantities leaving the system are created by invoices and their selling of the parts, and the on-hand quantity goes up if it was received. So those are the places we need to make our corrections. If we oversold our part on a ticket, why would I correct it here and take an expense hit on our P&L when we should go to the ticket that it was oversold on and make the correction there? Or if I over-received the part and we have too many on hand, we need to go back to the receiving ticket, because likely if the receiving ticket was done incorrectly, the payable to the vendor that we purchased those parts from is also wrong. And eventually accounting is going to have to circle back and correct that anyway. So, and I hate to harp on this so much, but I have found more parts errors in dealerships when they just let the team make these numbers match what they think it needs to match. When in reality, the problem occurred on a receiving ticket. The problem occurred when the part was sold. That is where the corrections need to be made. Then there's no expenses unnecessarily pinging your department, and you'll find a greater net profit overall. So by default, we do not allow users to change quantity or cost, even if they're wrong. If they are, there's a reason it's wrong. And you can always find history of a part right here. We'll get into that more on a existing part record here so you can see some data, but just want to reiterate that because year over year, I found physical inventories with variances of 10%, 15%, 20%, where they're taking a, $50,000 expense entry at the end of the year. Why? Because folks were doing those corrections throughout the year thinking, oh, I'm making the system right, when in reality, you're just making more errors than correcting where the mistake happens. So just keep that in mind. If you do have users attempting to do that or asking for that permission, I would hold off and figure out the root of the problem. It would be more of a receiving issue or a sales issue if it continually happens and the quantities in your system continue being inaccurate. With that being said, when you do receive into the system looks for a bin location. You may not bin your inventory. Well, our system does require either a placeholder or something to put into a bin to relieve from. So typically we can put a bin of none if there really is none, or you can just leave it blank. But sometimes it is nice to still see, because from history purposes, you can see what was added to the bin, who received it in. So it's up to you all. If you wanted to create a master bin list for all of your parts, you can do that up here in the top, edit, modify bin locations, and these will be bin locations available to any part. But sometimes you don't stock a part in unless, or you only stock this part into that particular bin. You can always add it on the fly here. So maybe this part has 2 separate bins. Okay, not going to put any quantities in because we haven't received this part. I shouldn't be changing my on hand without receiving that part in. Okay. You can attach images to a part and click on it here to kind of maximize it. Those images are coming from a file path you choose here. So many times I'll see a parts manager create a folder on their desktop and throw a picture of every part in there, and they start linking those parts records directly to that link by putting the URL here. Then you've got a picture reference for your team to utilize and cross-reference when they're adding this part. All right, we do have a part merge. So if you have 6 different part numbers for what is really truly one part record in your system, we can merge all of it and the history is collected. We don't lose anything. It just brings all of that history into one part record. I won't go through that today, but if you find the need to use this, especially if you convert in a previous parts data file and some of those parts need to be cleaned up, this merge can help you do that. If this part came from a price book, you'd be able to hit open price book and find it. Unfortunately, mine has not. So it kind of kicked me out there, not liking what I did. So let's find back our part, but as you can see, it didn't come from a part book record, right? It was just a random widget part. So how do I find my widget? You can hit search, go to description, type in widget. We're currently in location 2. That's the wrong one. Let me go back to my other one here. Again, I don't remember my part number, but I can do a search for it and find the widget that we keyed in. There it is. Okay, so as you saw, it did push me out of that part, but there is no price book record for this part, so it couldn't find anything. You would see a price book reference with this date here, so that's kind of your trick. If you don't see a date here, it means it was never added from a price book, right? If I added it from a price book, it would tell me the last time that price book was updated, or the book that it came from when it was last updated. So without seeing that date here, it's kind of an indicator that this is not from a price file. So moving down our list, we talked about min and maxes, the dimensions. Let's talk about every part needs a default supplier in the system. You have to have one. It won't let you save the record without one. So this doesn't mean you can only order from this vendor. You can always switch it at the time of the purchase order. But what this allows you to do is to pre-default every time we buy this widget, it's from O'Reilly. So automatically when we create purchase orders for this part, it's going to presume that we're ordering from O'Reilly. But as always, we can override that if we need to. So I talked about the on-hand quantities and the cost changing being probably the most important thing to take away from this session, right? If you're constantly finding errors with your parts quantities and your inventory balances, it's likely someone's manipulating these or the receiving process is breaking down somewhere. Now, probably the second most important thing I can show you on this screen is the part category. I'm going to try to make this simple, but it's really not. So kind of keep that in mind. But the category controls the accounting. So when I sell this part, what's going to happen? Well, let's go to our category setup. We have multiple categories for different types of items in your system. These can be you can add to these lists, you can customize them and change them however you see fit. But for example, here's the part record. So when I sell a part on a body shop retail ticket, it's going to credit this account, debit this account, credit this account, and if there's a discount applied, it will debit that account. And there is a different table record for each item type. So for whether I'm selling this part on a body shop ticket, a parts ticket, a service ticket, or any of the ticket types that we have created, it will use the following GLs. Make it pretty straightforward. Now, this gets compounded, so let's talk about this. So part category, everything that you can physically hold in your hands that has a part number and would be counted at a end of year physical should be in this category and nothing else. You saw earlier we had a freight part in the system, right? So I'm going to search up FR for freight. Freight is not in the part category. It's not a real thing. We're using it as a placeholder so that we can bill out and charge ourselves freight on receiving and parts and service tickets. So again, special custom parts like this are not meant to be in that part category. One of the worst things you can find is someone adds the part of SS for shop supplies and it's in the parts category. Because now every time we bill out shop supplies, whether it's an automatic percentage or we manually add this part to a ticket to override, it's pulling from our parts inventory. So if I've billed out $10,000 worth of shop supplies out of my parts inventory account, when we do a physical at the end of the year, even if every other part is accounted for, guess how much our variance is going to be? The value of those shop supplies sold. So we need to be careful if we are using these placeholder part numbers, which there's not too many. On our side of things, we really use 3. We use that freight one, we use shop supplies, and I also have a part called sublet. But when you get access to the system, those parts are going to be set up correctly for you. I would just advise, as your team uses the system more and more and they key in new parts, they really shouldn't use any other category other than part. If we have some sort of custom thing like a fee, like a wash fee, or a state inspection charge, right? There's many different things that different states can require. We could be creative with the accounting and credit a revenue account for wash fees, or credit a liability for state inspections that we have to turn around and pay when we do those state inspections. Whatever the case may be, we can do those things with these categories. But for an actual part, you would physically count and you would have a part number 4, not a shop supply, but a real part. It needs to belong in that category. Okay? So from here, we've got make, class, department, source, tax alternate, and replacement code. These are all detail tabs. So what does that mean? So now I could specify that this widget is supplied, and look at this breakdown. This is kind of crazy how all the different information in here. You can control what these drop downs have by going to edit, modify, and in the case of the tax alternate, you can find that there. But the main one is parts pick list. So when I want to define what belongs in the source table, the make table, the class table, the department, you can add and remove or relabel the ones that are here. Your system will come with either blanks or a couple entries. It would be up to your team to get in here and sit down and discuss how do we want to code our inventory. Now, this may seem fairly useless, but there is a purpose, I promise, and I'll talk about it now. We won't be going through physical inventory today, but that is the main impact for that, and I will show you that in just a second. So what that means is, let's say I code this part to a make. Maybe this is a 3M widget. What's our classification? Well, I was taught by Lippert an ABC method of counting. Really simple. You code your parts to A when they're your high volume or high margin parts that you sell frequently, that are usually in and out of stock a couple times a month. Then you have your B parts. This is items that aren't sold as frequently. So if you take 80% of your inventory, and that is the bulk of what's flying off the shelves, but you still have about 15% of inventory pieces that you buy for the shop. They sit in your parts store. They sit in the counter, as random items to be purchased, but they don't sell very frequently. You can code those to B. And then you code C to any special order items that are typically marked as non-stock. So you can always mark a part as non-stock when you have a special order. It makes it easy to isolate if you pull a non-stock report for everything on hand. There's all your special orders that your customers haven't picked up yet. But you can also code it to Class C. And then, when we do physical counts at the end of the year, we actually have a random physical process that says you tell it how many parts to go grab and out of which classes. So I could say, go grab me 100 part numbers, 50% from Class A, 25% from Class B, and 25% from Class C. Now you have a physical inventory that the system's generated for you with 100 random part numbers from those classes. Then you send out your team to go count those parts and return. And that small sample of your inventory should indicate the health as a whole. If those 100 parts come back 99% accurate on your counts, then I would feel comfortable waiting doing a cycle count this month, or perhaps if this is the end of the year, maybe we don't do a full count this year. Versus if I do that same physical and it comes back as 40% accurate, so 100% of those parts that 100 of those parts we counted, only 40% were actually true to what the system says, then we want to do a physical right away. So this is a process that you can easily implement to your parts team by just simply using ABC. Now you can see there's other classes in here if you want to. Again, this is a demo environment. People have messed with this, put in whatever. But I think that's a great way of utilizing just a single manipulation of a field to help you both on the physical counting side and just for reporting. You know, you can pull a report on all your A parts and see what's not selling to move it into B. Again, it does require a little bit of work when you're stocking things in, but I think it helps in the long term. Department, what is this widget? We'll call it an exterior widget, that's fine. Source, again, you'll see there's some overlap between all of these. Again, some dealerships use these differently than others. I'm just going to say that I think class and department are probably the most indicative here of what's going on. But again, fill this out as much as you need to. Okay, same thing with replenishment codes. You need to populate that list of replenishment codes. I believe that's in edit, modify. I believe that's in the labor ops codes listing. Actually, I don't think that's where it is. I think it's in that parts pick list again, like we talked about. Yep. Okay. Invoice reminders. If you recall earlier, we had a freight part that had an invoice reminder. So make sure to go freight. Now, every time I add this part to a ticket or to a receiving ticket, this message will pop up. And so now you have visibility to whoever's utilizing this part number so that they know what they might need to do. Can't guarantee they'll do it, but you do have the message and the notification right there. The memo is internal. It doesn't go anywhere but this screen, but you can always populate this with, make sure inventory goes below, whatever. You can put your name in there to specify who put it in, but again, this is just up to you. This pricing matrix here is a company-wide matrix for all of your parts, and that's coming from Edit, Modify, Pricing Matrix. So when you set up pricing in the system, we can say, okay, based on average cost or replacement cost or whatever cost method you decide to use, if a part is between $0 and $50 of average cost, charge 100% of our list price. What's our list price? That's the retail price field right here. 90% of L if they're price category B. If any of you can recall from our previous sessions, what are these letters? These letters are assigned to your entities in the CRM. If you go to that entity or your customer and you pull up that parts and service info tab, there is a price category that they're assigned, A, B, C, all the way down probably to Z. I don't think I've ever seen anyone use more than the first 4 or 5. So they're there if you need them, but likely you'll probably cover most of your bases with just 4. I frequently see C, price category C, used all the time for internal, right? What do you bill yourselves internally when you do internal work or prep for delivery work? 10% above cost is how this one's set. There are a few calculations that we can talk about right now. I don't have the list in front of me, but I will say that L is list price. C is replacement cost, so looking at this field here. A is average cost, which is looking at this field here. You can use G for gross profit to specify a certain gross profit, and M for profit margin, basically a discount margin. So You can get a full list of those. I'll have to find if there's a document, or once you get access to the system, I'll see if there's a place where you can see that info. But I will say that most users end up basing off cost for markup purposes, right? If pricing ever changes and you're set to a cost, well, usually you'll always, you won't hurt yourself by not upcharging, if you forget to, but a part price went up that you had to pay for. Now, the system only uses one of these cost methods at a time for accounting. However, replacement cost calculates every time you receive the part, no matter if you're set to it or not. Same with average cost. Average cost will continue to change every time you receive a part in. But if you're set to replacement cost, then it's just a value for you to track that info. So one of the first things you'll want to do, and this is in your implementation setup sheets, is which cost method do you want to be set to, replacement, average, or standard? And my understanding of standard is it's pretty much just a direct pull out of the price book, right? You're not upcharging your own, you're not paying additionally from third-party vendors, you're buying directly from the manufacturer, so the standard cost should match what is directly coming out of their price book. At least is my understanding of it. But I will say that I think 99% of dealers I've worked with are set to either replacement cost or average. And we'll talk about the differences of the two in just a moment. So long story short, set your pricing matrix either as complicated as you want or as simple as you want. I will say a big trick that I found is if you scroll all the way over, you can do a pricing matrix by vendor. I don't know if that's important to you, and that gets a little complicated with how you track your pricing. But if we have a separate markup on NTP parts than we do for our Dometic parts or our warranty parts, versus our Lippert components parts, then you can set up different matrices based on that vendor. So when you have the vendor selected here, it's going to look at that pricing matrix. The only problem with doing it by that is if you have a part in like this O'Reilly, I don't have a matrix for that part. So it's just going to default to the first in the list. So just keep that in mind. Some folks don't get too complicated with the matrix or even set one up at all. They just say, okay, everyone is set to price category A, no one gets any other letter, and as long as this reads correctly, we're good. So it can be that simple if you want it to. So from here, let's continue. I think probably the third most common mistake I find, other than the category being incorrect or manipulation of our cost or our on-hand values, is the setting up of a roll or a multi-function part, right? Like if I purchase something in a stack of 100 and I sell it by the foot, or whatever the case may be, there's a lot of errors with how those items get keyed in, and it's actually fairly simple. When you're plugging this information in, you're selling in your purchase packaging. Don't do any calculations. These don't affect anything. They are visual reminders. So when we buy this, or when we sell something, we sell them each, but when we purchase them by the drum. Or in the case of like a foot of tape, right? We buy we sell tape by the foot, and we purchase it in a roll. And the packaging ratio is where we handle the calculation. So if I buy a roll of tape and there's 100 feet in it, your packaging ratio becomes 100. Your pricing becomes the price per foot, so both our cost and our our retail price. So I have $5 billed out when we sell each foot, and it costs us $2.50 for each foot we purchase. That is the correct way to set this up. Again, these do nothing but indicate to your team how you purchase it and how you sell it. This is the field that matters. And you may be asking, well, how does this work on a receiving ticket? I don't mean to jump too far ahead to our session this afternoon, but let's click New Receiver. I'm going to do this really quickly. I'm going to pull up O'Reilly. And if you're noticing, I actually am creating a receiving ticket without a purchase order. You can do that. It is the receiving ticket that generates the purchase entries, the accounts payable transaction, the debit to inventory. Not to say you should not use the purchase ordering. I am on a demo. I'm trying to work through this quickly. But just keep in mind, especially when you're starting up your system and you need to bring in all of the quantities of parts, if you're not doing the conversion, sometimes one big receiving ticket is the best way to handle that. So let's go ahead and put my part number on here, and let's do a quantity received of 1. So it's putting my cost at $250. 1 roll at 100 feet in the roll at $2.50 per foot gives us a $250 roll of tape or of this widget. Okay, I'm going to receive it into bin A1. I'm going to make a reference, tape roll purchase. That's how accounting is going to find this. And we're going to go ahead to receive it. Remember, how do I adjust quantities in the system? You have to receive them. So now watch what happens when I pull up my part number again, just to refresh the screen. Now I have 100 in inventory to start relieving one at a time. Okay? Don't get into the decimal places. I've seen where, someone buys 1 in and then it goes to 0.99, 0.98, 0.97 as they sell it by the foot. Just use your packaging ratio and that will automatically put into quantities how you sell it. Okay? So now I have 100 in inventory. They're all in bin A1. I can relieve it as we go. And look at our replacement cost, right? I typed that in, but because it pulled in automatically on my receiving ticket, that's the values that it used. So now let's play the cost replacement game. I'm going to do another receiver. Again, no purchase order. Not to say that's how you should operate, but just for the sake of knowing how the system works. Roll of tape 2. These are terrible names for reference numbers, but just trying to get through this. We're going to receive 1 again. But instead, this time, we got a little bit of a discount. We paid $2 per foot. We'll receive it in. Oops, I forgot freight. Let's make sure we receive the freight that we paid for, right? So we paid $10 in freight. So I have a $10 freight charge, $200 in parts for a total accounts payable to O'Reilly's for $210. We'll go ahead and receive this now. I don't need any barcode labels. This is the point in time where you can print those. The whole purpose of my showing this to you is watch what happens to my costs now as I refresh this part. Replacement went down, all the way down to 2. And now my inventory value says we have 2 times 200. So we have $400 worth of parts in our inventory. But that's not true. We just purchased $200 of parts inventory plus $250. So we're actually undercutting ourselves $50 worth of cost. So our margin is going to look higher than it really is. That's the disadvantage of replacement cost, is it changes every single time to show you the last time you purchased it, and it applies it to every part in inventory. If that is not the cost method you would prefer to use, which ultimately leads to more variance throughout the year, then set yourselves to average cost, right? Because now, if I have $450 worth of cost into these parts that I've purchased, and I bring up my calculator, and I say, okay, well, we spent $450 on it. Where are we at with our average cost? It's spot on. Over time, averages will still skew a bit, and you will still have variance, but you have much less so than just automatically applying your most recent purchase price back to all of the quantities on hand. So with that little demonstration, I think you have enough information to decide, do we set to replacement cost? Do we set to average cost? Please remember, whichever method you pick, the other one will still continue to calculate. If we're selected to be average cost, replacement cost is going to change every single day, every time you receive that part, and that's okay. You can kind of track over time how much we've paid, per ticket item. So again, just lots of little things here that you definitely want to ask the team or decide internally before setting up the system, so we make sure we use the appropriate cost method. All right, moving forward, we do have a core charge. We talked about this. If this is a core part, it can apply that charge automatically. The reorder method, set to simple min max versus suggested reorder. We're going to cover this later in our ordering and receiving trading later this afternoon. Just keep that in mind. The profit margin is a simple calculation based off of your cost method and the price that we have set here. Country of origin, if you need to track where this originated from, or if there's a tariff code, this is for our Canadian dealers. So you have an idea of all of these fields here, or most of them. And now we want to go through these checkboxes. Now, some of these checkboxes don't do anything, but simply check on, yes or no, right? If it's checked, it's a yes. If it's not checked, it's a no. We're going to go through those, talk about what they do, and then I will briefly discuss our remaining tabs so you have a full understanding of how this module can work. Clearance, yes or no, does not change my price. All it does is flags the part as a quote-unquote clearance item. Why would that be valuable? You can go to reporting. Go to your your parts master inventory reports. In your master inventory report, you can say, show me only clearance items. And with that one little button click, now I can isolate my report. Same thing, if we go back, oops, this is my other store. We don't need this. Get out of that. So if I go back to our part and I check off clearance and hit save, let's see, am I in the right location? Company, oh, I have a field filled out up here. Be careful about that. Make sure to, you can always click clear on a report to put everything back to stock. And then we'll say, show me only clearance items. And there's only 3 in the system, one of which is the widget that we just keyed in. So no price changes, it's just simply a toggle or a flag to populate that report. Drop ship items just means that you will have access, it will automatically, when you add this part to a ticket, check the drop ship box under the expectation that you don't purchase these into the inventory. You always drop ship them directly to your customers. Non-stock item, we've talked about this. So if I have a special order part we don't typically purchase into inventory, you can code it as non-stock. Now it's very easy for you to come in here and say, show me only non-stock items. If I still have an on-hand quantity for a non-stock item, this is a special order that no one picked up. And if I have this many pages of unclaimed special orders that we still have on-hand quantities of, well, we're on the hook for all of these special order parts that may not be valuable to another customer. Taxable, if this item needs to apply either taxable, on the ticket, or if it's a GST tax, you would leave those checked. Usually every part you add into the system defaults with those items checked. Other tax items are the commercial tax exemption, taxing on the purchase of the item. So the receiving ticket will create a receiving tax. This is typically for Canadian dealers who have a receiving goods tax, or other areas that may have that. Incentive item, again, is this doing anything other than giving you an option to pull a report and say, hey, this week, let's try to sell all our incentive items. They're aged, we need to get them out of inventory. Just like our clearance, it's not changing anything, it's just giving us the opportunity to filter for it. Obsolete is an important tool. Why? Because once a year, or multiple times a year, you can go into our parts tools and say, mark parts obsolete. What does that do? That allows me to tell the system, okay, for every part we haven't purchased or sold since January 1st of this year, if I want to use a cost range, I can, but otherwise I can say mark them obsolete. Why would you do this? Well, if it checks that part off as obsolete, then I can run a physical and not include obsolete items, or we can delete them if there's no quantities on hand. If there are quantities on hand, this is something my parts manager would want to see. Why do we have an item marked obsolete that we've had in inventory for 2 years and no one's bought it, no one's received any more of it? We either need to wholesale it or throw it out. So again, just another toggle for your team to use. Do not allocate does not allow me to allocate this item. So if it's a very high value, or hey, there's no putting this item on hold, if you're going to purchase it, you have to purchase it now, you can check off do not allocate. Track serial number will force you, when you receive this part into the system, to assign it a serial number at the time of receiving, and you will find that here. When you sell that part, it will also ask you the serial number. Which one of this list are you selling? If you have 6 in stock and they all have 6 different serial numbers, you match it up. check that off. So then when that customer, if they return with that item, the system won't let them return it unless it is one of the serial numbers that was sold. So that way you can validate if they've done a part swap with another broken part or something that was not originally purchased from you. Barcode means that it will print a barcode when you do receive the ticket, or it will attempt to. Do not round. We'll just stop the rounding calculation. If you receive a part with up to 4 decimal places, it cannot round those items, but typically we want to get to the nearest penny. If I want to sell these items on the deal desking module, I have to check sell and finance. If this is not checked, I won't be able to sell this part onto a deal. So again, you won't want your entire parts inventory available for sale on a deal, but whatever you could upsell, you'd want to make sure it's marked that way. Lock description on invoice. If you saw earlier, if I go add a parts ticket, this is a good example for shop supplies, but not so much for everything else. If I come in here and say I used shop supplies, I used $5 worth, and then I want to say which miscellaneous materials I used, caulking, nuts and bolts, you can change it. And now that'll print out with that description. Locking the description with this just allows someone from, overriding what the description says. Featured item. Again, this is just like our incentive or our clearance. Not functionally doing anything other than allowing us a toggle for filtering purposes, or if we pushed our parts inventory to the website, we could use this to make sure this part image and parts record shows up on the front page or something like that. Do not discount. If an employee attempts to discount this part either through the ticket or from a line item on the ticket, it won't let them. Is the part active or not? Some folks have asked for this. It's kind of like a supersession thing, like if this part is no longer actively used, we can uncheck it there. I haven't found too much use for this, but just like the others, it's just a toggle. So if I want to find all active clearance items, those 2 check boxes and then your report will suffice. Otherwise, I could say, show me all my not active clearance items. And these are things we just need to throw away. So you can kind of get to a lot of interesting pieces of data by combining some of these. Prompt for cost and price means that if I have both of these boxes checked, watch what happens when I add this part to a ticket. It's going to ask me for the part cost, which I know based on I have it right here, and the part pricing. Well, this seems kind of silly if you've got the correct information here. Usually you wouldn't prompt for pricing for cost. However, when you sell freight and I add freight to a ticket, I want cost or price to populate. Actually, you really wouldn't even want cost because we received in the cost when we purchased the part. So even on this freight part, I should only have prompt for price checked. And as you can see, if I add that freight part back, it's just going to ask me, what are we billing our customer for freight? Well, I could pull up the receiving ticket. How would I do that? You can go back to the part, hit history. Here's where it was received, hit open. Okay, what did we pay in freight? Well, we paid $10, so as long as we bill out at least $11, we've made, $10, we've broken even. Okay, so lots of research you can do from, again, just this general tab. So now you should be pretty comfortable with just about everything here. You'll know what you can ignore because it's not necessary, and you'll know what you do want to pay attention to because it has a lot of focus. Let's continue down our list and discuss each additional tab, and then hopefully we'll have enough time for a couple questions at the end if there are any. The bin locations we've talked about, I can specify what the default bin is, when we do receive, and you can get pretty complex with your bins here. Row, aisle, position, you name it. You can even set minimum and maximums per bin. Pricing, that's a pricing matrix reference to the table I showed you earlier. Every part can have its own custom pricing matrix. If you allow your team to edit this screen, they can override the company-wide matrix and change this to now sell at $4.50, even though this says $5. So if I add this part to a ticket, remember my pricing change won't have affected any items that are already on invoices, but if it's not, oh, I haven't hit save yet, but if I saved, it would be at the 90L. So just keep that in mind. If you don't want folks doing that, we might want to make sure that this page is restricted, but I don't think that happens too frequently. Ship times. Every time you purchase order a part from a vendor, the system tracks which vendor you bought it from, when the PO was created and ordered, and the difference between when it was received and ordered. You will actually see, if I pull up another part here, NTP, it took us 0 day, our average ship time was 0. Why? There was probably never a receiver created for this. So that's probably why these values are invalid, but it'll always track the differences of these in each time you order. The sales tab, if I wanted to apply a sale to say, okay, from the beginning of January 2021 to the end of the year, we have a 2020 is over sale. Everybody gets a 5% discount across the board on this part. So no matter what, it's now going to bill at this price as opposed to what we had earlier. Pretty straightforward. The accessories tab. If this part can link up or is utilized with additional parts, you could find those parts in this table here and add them in. I'm just going to add 2 or 3. So I guess alongside this widget, any one of these 3 items could potentially be utilized as an accessory. If I want to remove them, highlight them and delete them. I won't spend too much time on the BOM tab or the Bill of Materials tab. This is for those of you who do any sort of in-house fabrication, and you can create, or you can say, these 3 parts, a labor charge, and combining these 2 assets in these quantities. So 1 labor hour, if we wanted to use labor, 1 of these and 2 of these. I could make this widget by creating a sales ticket and fabricating these items internally. Again, if this is relevant to you, we can always expand upon this in the one-on-one trainings, but I don't run into many folks who do bill of materials. Upsell is automatically going to calculate for you every time I sell this widget. If it finds a certain percentage, so 50% of the time when I sell this widget, it's also sold with this part number. You'll see those references here. We talked about the serial number tab. This is where every part that does have a serial number, you'll see them all listed out here, as well as the ones that have been sold. Substitute tab, similar to the accessories tab. This is meant to show that if this part is out of stock in a pinch, this part will work instead. If you want to remove it, remove it. The trend we talked about earlier, this automatically calculates for you. This is based on every time you sell a part, every time you order a part, and every time you have a lost sale flagged. And you can use this trend eventually to set your system up to suggested reorder. We'll talk about this a bit more in this afternoon's ordering and receiving session. The barcode is simply, if it's checked off, it will print barcodes when we receive them. And you have detail lines if we want to include any additional printout information on the barcode. We talked about images. That's where you can assign an image to that part. The identifiers tab is meant so that you can plug in multiple part numbers and reference this one. So for example, let's say in NTP's price book, or what was the other one, the Stag one? In Stag's price book, they call this part, to see it can't find it. It's not finding anything from the, you can see that it's blank. So let's do this again. Let's add it. Let's do 94-6538. And look, it found it. So put that identifier in, save it. Now my team could type in either one of these numbers, and the system's going to reference back to this part number. Let's say NTP calls it 12345. You can do that, link it there. However, if it doesn't find it, you won't see any cost information show. This is us telling the system, oh no, it's in there, but there's still no pricing info. So typically, you know, we're letting the price books add this information in. Internet tab is for those of you who host your internet or your parts online for sale. We'll go into this further, probably one-on-one, since this is not a typical dealership setting. And the options tab is just like your accessories or your substitutes. It's just additional items that you can reference belong or go with this part. Again, someone somewhere needed the ability to add that extra info, so we created this for them. usually not as necessary there. I do want to go ahead and get ready for our Q&A section, but I did skip over one item that I did want to talk about, and that's the price book. We took the long way of adding something into inventory, right? Let's do it the fast way. I'm going to pull up NTP's price book, and I'm going to search for a hitch. It found a hitch, $130 of cost, $198 in inventory. I'm going to click Add to Inventory. Now, if I go into Master Inventory, I don't have the part number memorized. I probably should have, but let me put in my description of hitch, and I know it came from NTP because it was from their price book. There it is. It was in here before, so there was quantities on hand. So let me pick a better reference here, just so you can see it. Pick our NTP price book. Usually, if you see on hand values in here, it means the part's been in your inventory. Or if there's a 0 there, it means it was in there at one time, but it's currently at 0. But let's find a part where there is nothing in there. That one has, see if I can find a random part. There we go. Not on file. This part has never been in our inventory. So I hit add. Now watch what happens if I come in here and type in that part number. Oops, grabbed the wrong one. You know, my memory from price book to inventory screen is not very good. Let's move back, grab a random one here. 21-1275, add to inventory. Oh, 72, oops. Making that more complicated than I need to. All right, now with this part in here, look at what it added for me. The part number, the description, the vendor, the right category, pricing. Now all I have left to do is maybe code in some of our specific class department information that we want to key in, and then go receive it. Much faster. So adding from a price book is the best way to import or bring in new part records that you purchase. Either search the price book directly by just typing in the part number and hitting enter or tab. We'll jump right to it. You can even start a quote from this screen prior to going into inventory and manipulating it to see if a customer is even interested in an estimate that you print out for them. So I apologize for running over for a couple more minutes there, but I thought it would be advantageous. The whole point of my walking through that by hand was to show you that it's a much longer process than just working directly from your price books. So not every part will be in a price book, so you will need to do adds, by hand every now and then. But if the bulk of your inventory is keyed in through the price books, you're going to find it's fairly simple. Now, one other question that comes up all the time, I'll go ahead and leave the floor open for Q&A if anyone wants to write in. The only other thing I wanted to show here is watch what happens when I add a part record that exists at another location. I don't know if I'm going to get lucky here. Unfortunately, no, but you can see the system saying, hey, we're finding that part either in a different location. So if company 1 has this part number, we can just copy from their records, right? The part number, the category, the pricing, all of it. So if that part exists in one store or the next, you don't have to recreate it from scratch. Just reference that previously created part number and it will create the exact same record over here. The only thing, again, you have left to do is get your quantities correct through receiving. And in here, of course, we're seeing the direct copy from the price book. Super simple. Can't get any easier than that. So hopefully you have a good understanding now of adding items to inventory. Again, not quantities, but adding the actual part record that we're going to then turn around and use on our receiving tickets, use on our parts tickets. I have a question that popped up from Denny here. This mentions, this part of our install is the most concerning to me. Parts inventory has always been a problem for us. I will need to watch this session a few more times to get comfortable. So much information and so much money involved, I don't want to make a mistake. Is it possible to have the video uploaded ASAP? Denny, I will reach out to our marketing team and let them know, there have been a few questions on when these will be posted to the website. So I will try to find out that information and let them know that, maybe send an email blast out to everyone that's been attending. I will mention that we will have this session again next week, same time, so next Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. But if you don't want to wait that long, hopefully I can get an answer back from our team to know when these are posted. And then you are correct. There are so many moving pieces to the parts system, and this is no matter what VMS software you have or you've been using, they all run into the same types of issues. And to me, it's always the usage of the part system and how familiar folks are. So you're absolutely correct in wanting to get as educated here on this as possible. I know it's a lot of information. I do, unfortunately, move fairly quickly through some of these. I think that's just my habits. So again, hopefully you're able to digest some of this, possibly watch that video from now till next week, and then maybe review it maybe one more time before getting access to the system. So again, you are correct. It is probably the most information-heavy portion of the software. There's so many rooms for someone to miskey something, mistype it. A lot of parts employees, there's some turnover in a lot of those departments that I find. So, it's just getting a good process. Again, I'm always going to try to recommend the price books, working from those. And then really we want to make sure that the permissions of your users are restricted. We don't want someone adding parts into inventory if they shouldn't be. Truly receiving and ordering, I've always found, is better when it's two different employees. If you have one person doing both sides of it, it can get a little convoluted. So, but I will reach out for you to try to figure out when those videos will be posted. You're welcome. Aside from that, there was, feel free to jump out, everyone. For those of you who got to run, I know this has ran over a little bit, but like Denny said, there is a lot of information to cover here. The last thing I wanted to show you is, what if I add a part number and it's not in my inventory, ABC123? You can directly add right from here. Digit 2, default supplier, we buy it from NTP, buy it for $5, sell it for $2.50. You can see that's pretty quick. I just got a part keyed in on the fly. What I did not do is handle our quantities, so I would be relieving into the negative here because we never received this part in. So you can add items on the fly, but you're going to run into inventory count issues by just letting the team do that and assume they don't have to receive it. So maybe we don't let users add parts on the fly in the case that if you're trying to sell something, it's not in the system, something else got missed. One of the steps prior to this got missed. We shouldn't be selling something. If you're holding it in your hands and you don't want to lose a counter sale, by all means sell it, but then come back and figure out, why did that part arrive and we never received it into the system? So obviously we will pick back up on inventory next week. Like I mentioned, same time. We tried to make these webinars as consistent as can be. So we'll let you go for the next hour. We welcome you back here at 3 p.m. Eastern. We will cover ordering and receiving, which will have a lot of overlap of what we just talked about. So thank you all for good questions, for your patience, and we'll talk to you all soon in about an hour.